Hi guys, this is my final presentation. I will be analyzing two of Christopher Nolan's films, Interstellar and Dunkirk, where I will look at the heroic qualities of multiple characters. I wanted to start off by giving information on Christopher Nolan. He's a British-American director starting since 1989. He's featured 10 feature films. His most famous trilogy has been the Batman Dark Knight with Christian Bale. That launched him into the mainstream industry. He filmed Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. Interstellar, that was an epic sci-fi film that was released in 2014, and Dunkirk, a fictionalized account of Dunkirk in World War II that was released last year. His themes tend to be nonlinear progression, like nonlinear storytelling, where the scenes tend to be filmed out of order and you have to figure out what's going on. Very intense soundscapes. He works with Hans Zimmer in creating these big, majestical musical compositions. And his favorite actor of all time to work with is Michael Caine, who starred in most of his films. The biggest theme that I've noticed in Christopher Nolan's films has been heroism, and these heroes are the ones that fight for the survival of others and not for themselves. They tend to face not just like specific villains, but like the environment, the challenging aspects of something that you have to escape to survive, and instead of just their survival, these heroes are fighting for the survivals of others. The first of the three characters we will analyze in the Dunkirk film is Farrier. Farrier is played by Tom Hardy, who is an Air Force pilot and flies in a Spitfire plane in most of the movie. He's the only pilot out of the three Air Force volunteers that arrive to the beach of Dunkirk and protects the hundreds of soldiers at the Dunkirk beach. Farrier is a hero in my eyes because of the way he's willing to sacrifice his life and constantly protect others. He protects his friends, the other pilots, the civilian boats, and all the soldiers at the beach, and knows that he will not have safety himself. He will know that once he arrives at Dunkirk, he will have no gas to fly back home to England. Another risk that Farrier has to face is the fuel gauge on his plane is broken. He doesn't know how much fuel he has left. He has to measure it, he has to be calculated, he has to be focused, because he knows that he's the only one in the air that can protect all the soldiers down the sea and on the land. Once he arrives at Dunkirk, he lands safely, except he's the only one left on the beach. Everyone managed to escape. He made sure all the pilots, Nazi pilots, were killed off or crashed. But because he's alone on the beach, he winds up being taken by Nazis and becomes a prisoner of war. And his character seems to be okay with that because he knew he fought to make sure hundreds of soldiers escaped. The next set of characters are civilians that are willing to risk everything in Dunkirk. Mr. Dawson, played by Mark Rylance, and Peter, played by Tom Glyn Carney. They are a father-son duo who travels across the channel in their luxury yacht, the Moonstone. The Navy asked them to acquire their boat to go rescue soldiers at the Dunkirk beach, and the two are completely fine with that, but instead of just letting the Navy take it, they are willing to risk their lives and go on the boat themselves and save the soldiers. They're accompanied by George Mills, the young boy you see in the picture next to Peter. He winds up dying by a concussion, but all three of the characters are shown as major heroes because they're civilians that don't need to do this. They don't need to go across the channel and save some soldiers being risked at Nazis bombing them, shooting them. There's a scene where one of the boats is spilling oil into the water and they could explode. And it's just like they know the risk, they face the risk, and they still want to save dozens of soldiers off this beach across the water. And one of the aspects I think that triggers their heroism is that the Dawsons had another son who was in the military, and he died in the first 3 weeks of World War II. And they felt that, it's not stated, but it's implied, I believe, that if they save these soldiers, at least someone back at home will get their son back or their brother back. And that's why the Dawsons are willing to risk their lives to save someone else's family member. The last character, which I believe is a little bit controversial in Dunkirk, is Gibson, if that's his real name. He is played by Enrin Bonnard. He's a French soldier during World War II at Dunkirk, and the French soldiers are not able to evacuate to England like the British soldiers. They're forced to stay there and face the wrath of the Nazis. Gibson is too scared of that. He does not want that. He wants to survive, which is going against my initial definition of heroism. But he changes later on in the movie. He first steals a dead British soldier outfit to disguise himself as a British soldier to get out. And he doesn't speak an entire word in most of the film until the very end. He follows two of the main British soldiers named Tommy, and the other one's played by Harry Styles. I don't remember his name. He helps them survive, and which shows his heroism. He's changing. Instead of just surviving himself, he wants these other guys to survive as well. He helps Tommy by opening this door on a sinking ship, helping Tommy to get out. And when Tommy's stranded in the water and he's on a boat, he allows Tommy to hold onto a rope so he doesn't have to swim back to the beach. And so him caring for these strangers, even though they've never had a conversation, shows his heroism because he doesn't want to be the only one to survive. In the end, he's actually accused as a German spy by a group of Scottish Highlanders and Harry Styles, but in fact he reveals that he's just a French soldier trying to escape. And he dies in the end by a sinking boat because Harry Styles' character leaves him behind, and I was very hurt by that. I was like, how dare you? He's one of my favorite characters. It depends on if you see him as a hero or not. That's why I counted him as controversial. Okay, moving on to Interstellar. This is another controversial character. And, of course, Nolan's favorite actor ever, played by Michael Caine, Professor John Brand. Fun fact, Michael Caine plays a cameo in Dunkirk as Ferrier's flight leader, but you never see him. You just hear his voice, and he's talking to Ferrier, and then he dies at the beginning. And then Ferrier is forced to just travel to the beach alone. Alright, John Brand is a NASA scientist trying to save humanity because the world's ending, the crops aren't growing, and the atmosphere is turning into dust. He creates two plans. Plan A, to create a gravitational propulsion theory that allows everyone to evacuate Earth safely. And then Plan B is to send Matthew McConaughey's characters Cooper and John Brand's daughter to travel the stars and find a new home and reboot humanity through in vitro fertilization and frozen embryo eggs. He's a hero because he wants humanity to survive, but he's controversial because he lies to Cooper. He knows that Plan A is not going to work. It can't happen. No one can leave Earth, only a small group of people can. So he lies to Cooper about that to make sure Cooper goes to the stars and finds a new planet. He's a hero because he wants humanity to survive on. Not the humanity, people on Earth can't survive, but humans can survive in the future. That's him fighting for the future of humanity's survival. Moving on to Cooper in Interstellar, the main character. He's played by Matthew McConaughey. He's a pilot, a corn farmer, astronaut, and a father. He wants to ensure that his family survives, and that's why he's wanting to join the NASA program where he goes to space to find another planet. And he believes that, even though it's a lie, that once he finds a planet, he can figure out a way to get his family and the rest of humanity to the new planet. He sacrifices his love for his family and knowing that he will not watch his daughter grow up in order to make sure that she survives, that she gets a chance at a future. And fortunately in the film, he figures out a way to solve Plan A, the gravitational problem, and gives it to Murphy through another dimension. It's a very interesting and confusing scene for most people. He becomes a hero multiple times throughout the film because he's risking his life to protect Amelia Brand, to make sure his daughter survives. And that is shown again at the very end where he does meet his daughter, but he decides to leave the people he's met in order to find Amelia, who's alone in space out there on the new planet. The last character of Interstellar is Murphy. She's played by Jessica Chastain, Mackenzie Foy, and Ellen Burstyn, who's not pictured. She's Cooper's daughter and becomes a scientist at NASA in order to solve Plan A, the gravitational problem. Throughout the movie, she is shown as a hero in different ways. When she's very young, she defies school because they start losing in science, and she wants to she fights her teachers and believes in science. She fights for the survival of science. Later on, she notices that her brother is being ignorant towards her nephew's health, and she's worried about her nephew's survival because he's dying of a respiratory illness, and so she's willing to burn her brother's farm in order for them to move to safety. And the last heroism act that she has is she actually solves Plan A. She solves the gravitational issue with her dad, of course, in order for humanity to survive. She is the key factor that lets most of the human race to escape the dying Earth and to their new home. Alright, I have analyzed 6 of Christopher Nolan's characters, all of whom were willing to risk their lives, risk their survival, to ensure that other people survive through multiple ways, through war, through space, through science. And yep, that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.